There is growing speculation the United States and Israel are directly behind a series of unexplained explosions across Iran in recent weeks. The most notable of these blasts came last week at a uranium enrichment facility about 150 miles south of Tehran. This image shows just how extensive the damage was to that facility. In fact, experts believe the damage is even worse than pictures depict. While the most recent blast came this weekend in a wealthy residential neighborhood in Tehran. For more on all this, let's bring in Behnam Ben Taleblu. He is a senior fellow at the Foundation for the Defense of Democracies, and he joins me from Washington. Welcome, Behnam. Great to see you. So put into perspective for us, if you will, just how big of a blow this explosion was to the uranium enrichment facility for Iran's nuclear program. And do you consider this a huge setback for the regime?
Well, great to be with you. As you mentioned, there's been several blasts at nuclear, missile, military, and other storage and production centers across Iran for really about a month now, with no one officially stepping up to take claim except for one unconfirmed group, which is alleged to be domestic. At the site you mentioned, which is in the city of Natanz, there's a centrifuge production plant. Centrifuges are the machines that spin uranium that make it from low-enriched uranium to high-enriched uranium, basically making this element suitable for weapons grade, ready for a bomb. So if what is reported is correct, and what open source analysts have assessed from afar is correct, the production program for these machines could have been impeded by about 1+ years. But that doesn't mean the rest of Iran's nuclear program is being paused. Right now, we are on the 5th anniversary of the 2015 nuclear deal, and Iran continues to violate that deal by continuing to accumulate excess amounts of uranium.
Now, we know that Tehran is pointing fingers at Israel and the U.S., correct? Has there been any response from the U.S. State Department to these attacks? And does Tehran have any evidence of who might be behind them?
No, Tehran hasn't really put forward any evidence, but sometimes they have issued coded messages in state media about red lines being crossed and wanting to put forward some kind of deterrent message. And if the Iranians believe it to be Israel, you could likely expect that message to come as an attack on Israeli interests, perhaps as terrorism, or in the Syrian theater, where things are heating up. And if it's likely that Iran believes this to be America, you could expect the escalation that we're already seeing by Shia militias in Iraq to heat up, as well as perhaps a reversion to what we saw last summer with the multiple rounds of escalation in the Persian Gulf. So Iran, initially, it could have been looked like some of these things were accidents, but looking at the string, the pace, the scale, the scope of these explosions, the foreign sabotage thesis is ringing increasingly true, in my view.
And has the U.S. State Department made any comments on it?
Not officially. I think the U.S. may have denied it. I think the Israelis, who had different Israeli national security analysts, also weighed in on it, but never confirming or denying. In my view, it might be one of these countries. It could be a different regional actor. I think, again, there's a strong case to be made about the potential for foreign sabotage rather than this being a domestic terror group.
All right, so I do want to show our viewers photos from inside this same uranium facility from last November. These were released by Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, and they appear to show centrifuge machines. So, Behnam, remind us why this particular facility was such a big target, and where did Iran's nuclear program stand before this recent series of explosions?
So the facility you actually showed is part of two, I believe. There's a fuel enrichment plant and a pilot fuel enrichment plant in the city of Natanz. If I believe the media reporting to be correct on the explosion, it was at a centrifuge production facility in the same area, which is also in the same city of Natanz. Now, those machines you showed are advanced centrifuges. They spin uranium at speeds much faster than the majority of the centrifuges that were regulated and briefly removed by that 2015 nuclear deal. So the estimate of about 1 to 2 years that open source analysts have put based on this explosion is likely to be correct. Now, that's not a huge handicap because, again, where there is breadth and depth in the Iranian nuclear program, but it is significant, so it's not to be dismissed.
So, as you mentioned earlier, Tehran has sort of hinted at who it thinks is behind these explosions, but hasn't really said much of substance about it. Still, Our Israeli allies believe we should expect some retaliatory measures from Iran. Is Iran likely to retaliate even if it doesn't have concrete evidence of who's behind these explosions?
There is a strong case to be made for Iran trying to find a way to retaliate. And one could argue that the more the incompetence of the regime is proven to not be able to secure missile, military, and nuclear-related sites, there could be a greater source of pressure, not from the population, but from regime elites to do something from one faction against the other to project strength. There's an entire domestic thesis there. And another reason that we could expect Iranian retaliation is they believe if they could keep absorbing this, they could invite further rounds of foreign sabotage if that thesis is proven correct. If, again, these were one-off or two-off, the regime might have wanted to absorb it and lay low. But because increasingly they're sending these covert messages in state media about red lines and deterrence, I think we could expect to see some kind of response. But the timing and the type of response is up to them.
All right. Well, Behnam Ben Taleblu, thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your expertise on this.
My pleasure. Thank you.